Hi everybody, I'm Margaret Lewin and welcome to Margaret Lewin Quilting. Today we are going to be working on our very first block for Natalie's quilt, and this is the block that we're going to be working on. Now these instructions are going to be available on our Facebook group, which is Margaret Lewin Quilting, and it also will be available on my website for those of you who are not part of Facebook. And my website is missmarkersquilts.com. And there actually is a link below in the show notes directly to my website. So this is the block that we're going to be working on today. And I'm just covering up the writing because I just don't want you to get all confused about it. In fact, I'm going to use some fabric to do that because we all love to look at fabric. There's actually three different blocks to this quilt, and I'm going to show them to you. One of them is right here, and this one is called a cat's cradle block. The next one I refer to as a 2-patch. The next one is the 4-patch on the inside. Many of you know my daughter Lindsay, who helps me. Lindsay actually has put this block together, and she said to me one of the most important things she found when putting it together was the fact that this 4-patch in the center really needed to be square. So today what we're going to concentrate on is making the 2 patches, there's 3 of those, and the 4-patch for Natalie's quilt. If you are making the throw size, which is what I'm making, your quilt will take a total of 12 of these blocks, okay? So let's get started on it. The first one that I'm going to start you with is the 4-patch, which is right here. Here's my 4-patch all done. It squares up to 4.5 inches. I'm going to show you how it squares up. There's my block, 4.5 inches square. I am good to go. Now, you have 2 different ways. You can make this 4-patch block 2 different ways. The first one is you can cut 4 squares that are 2 3/4, and you can sew 2 and 2. So you can sew these 2 together, and then you'll just flip this around. Once that's sewn, you'll sew it together as a 4-patch. And then what you will do is square it up so that it's 4.5 inches. Now, I will tell you that we purposely made this block bigger. You can see right here. I'll move this one over. We purposely made this block bigger because what we want you to do is practice squaring that block up. It's really important that this block is square. So I'm going to show you how I want you to square it up. And I'm actually at the same time going to square this one up. I'm going to take my ruler, and you can see it has all the numbers. It is a smaller ruler. You can use a bigger one if you've got a bigger one. But we want this block to be 4.5 inches square. So half of 4.5 is 2 1/4. So I'm going to go out to my 2 and then my 1/4. I can see right here is my 2 1/4. So if I just take it down just a little bit, you can see right there. I'm going to, let's take a piece of white fabric and put it underneath that and see if that helps. So right here. There's my 2. There's my 2 1/8. Right there is my 2 1/4. Okay? That little L right there, or wedge, that's going to line up right in the center of my block so that I can get it to 2 1/2. So I'm going to take it, I'm going to lay that and put it right at the center of that block. The other thing I'm doing is I'm checking all the way across here and up and down here to make sure that I am right there on my seam line. I'm there. So I'm going to take my rotary cutter and I'm going to cut and cut. This is scraps. I'm going to pick this up and I'm going to rotate it, and I'm going to do the exact same thing. Except for now, I've got a couple more spots to check. I'm going to put a piece of blank fabric underneath here again so you can see. I'm going to check my 2 1/4 again. right? But I'm also going to be checking my 4.5, which is right down here. That 4.5 right here is going to line up right down here in my bottom corner. Okay, let me show you how I do it. I'm going to take it and I'm going to start right here with that. Right there, that little point. Then I'm going to do some nudging. I've rotated it just a little bit. I'm on my 2 1/4 right across here. I'm on my 2 1/4 down there. The last thing I'm going to check is right over here in this bottom corner to make sure I'm still on my 4.5, and I am. So that's going to tell me that when I trim this block up, it's going to be perfectly square at 4.5 inches. So I'm going to go ahead and cut and take away my little extras, and I now have 2 4.5-inch squares all ready to go into my quilt. I'm going to flip this just so that it's going the same way. There we go. That's one method of doing it. Your other method of doing it is right here. What you're going to do is take 2 strips, a strip of your gray and a strip of your dot. And you're going to sew those 2 3/4 inch strips together. So you've got a big, nice, long one. You're going to do that to 2, or what you could do is do it to 1 20-inch and cut it in half and have 2 10-inch pieces. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take these 2 and I'm going to nuzzle them together. And I'm going to show you what happens. Because when I set my seams and I pressed it, I pressed this piece and this piece towards the gray. Look at what can happen. When I open this up, see how nicely I can nestle those seams right together? It works out great. Helps a lot. So I'm going to put these 2 pieces together. And you might want to refer to my Quick Tip Tuesday. I'll put a link to it below. And look, no pins. That's what the title of it is. And it'll show you how to do this with potentially no pins. But if you're beginning at it, I'd start with some pins, okay? Gonna lay that down. Now I'm gonna take my ruler and I'm going to cut it at 2 3/4. And when I line it up this time, what I'm gonna do is I'm either gonna use this white line right here or this line, one or the other. I'm going to use those lines to line it up with my seam line. This is the big one that matters over here. This is the line that matters over here. What we're going to do is take our 2 3/4 inch line here and line it up also. So now I've got 2 points again to measure and line up to make sure I'm square. I've got one here and I've got one there. I'm going to take my rotary cutter. I'm going to cut that, pull this away. Now I'm going to take it over to my sewing machine and I'm just going to sew 1/4 inch all the way down here. When I do that, I'm going to set my seam, press it open, and then you'll see that I'll have my block to square up to 4.5 inches. So those are the 2 methods you can do in order to put the 4 patch together. Just going to caution you, please, please make sure that once you've put your 4 patch together, make sure you're squaring it up to 4.5 inches, because that's really important on this block. I'm going to set this aside, and the next thing we're going to work on is we're going to work on our 2 patch. These are our 2 patches. And here's my 4, because each block takes 4 of these. Now a 2 patch you can do the same way too. You can take 2 strips that are 2 3/4 inches and just sew those together. Cut them beforehand so that you've got them. What I like to do, especially with 2 patches, I'm going to set these aside, is I like to create strips like this. So I took the 2, I put them together, I set my seams, then I pressed it open. Once I pressed it open, I can now take my ruler. I'm going to switch rulers because I need one a little bit bigger. And I can just cut it to 4.5 inches. Right? Now, if you don't think this is perfectly straight down here, cut it a little bit bigger. It's okay. Let's do that first. I'm going to cut it at 4 and let's do 5/8, and I'll show you where that is. So I'm going to do 4, and we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I'm going to go 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's my 4 1/8 right there, or 4 5/8, I'm sorry. So I'm going to take my ruler, I'm going to lay it down, and again, I have to have something to square by. And I think you can see over here that my block is not perfectly straight. So I need to make sure that I have a little bit extra over here because I've got to square this side up too. I'm going to use my line right here, my black line, that I can easily see to make a straight line so that I've got a guide of some sort. I'm going to push this over and I'm going to cut my first one at, let's go to 4 5/8 right down here. You can see up here I'm greater than 4 5/8. So I'm going to make my very first cut here. Right. There's one cut. I'm now going to rotate my block because I know that this side is straight. I'm going to put my ruler down, and now I'm going to put it right at 4.5 inches because we've just made that one straight based on this line. Now I just want to make sure I'm good and straight. Now I'm going to trim this up. I know my block is 4.5 inches this way, but I also know it's not 4.5 inches this way. I'm going to rotate it again. Half of 4.5 is 2 1/4. I'm going to line up here at the top. I'm going to line up here at the bottom. And remember, I'm 4.5 down here. I know that because these two sides are square. And I'm 2 1/4 all the way up. So I'm going to trim here. I'm going to rotate my block. And I'm going to trim again. This time, I'm going back to use my 4.5 inch mark, my 2 1/4 inch mark, and my 4.5 down here, and just square it up. And there is my 4.5 inch square 2 patch. So what you're going to be working on this week is I want you to practice making your 4 patches. Here's my 4 patch. And I want you to practice making your 2 patches so that they all square up to 4.5 inches. I'm going to lay these out so you can see what they look like. There we go. There is the beginning of our very first block for Natalie's quilt. If you would like to make the quilt the same as I am, I do have kits available on my website. Just go out to missmarkersquilts.com, and again, there'll be a link below. If you are on Facebook, please make certain that you post pictures because we really like to see them. If you're not part of our Facebook group yet, come on over and join us. And we've recently gotten on to Instagram, so we can share pictures over there too, and I can't wait. I just love watching them. If you're on Instagram, make sure that you hashtag Natalie's quilt so that everybody can easily find pictures of your Natalie's quilt. Thanks so much for joining me today, and I will see you next week with how we're going to go about putting together our cat's cradle. And our cat's cradle go in these 4 spots, and that's going to finish off our block, and then we'll start putting it together. So I'll see you again really soon, and thank you so much for joining me today. Don't forget, come on out to Facebook, join our group there, and don't forget to follow me over on Instagram. See you again really soon. Have a great day. Bye.